Hey guys, Joe here with SimVRlabs, and tonight we're going to go ahead and get started on the Turbolet L410, this one right here, version 1.2.1, and we are going to do some SimVRlabs magic on this puppy. Try to get her VR ready, and it's going to serve sort of as a tutorial, sort of as a live look-in of what I do and how I do it. The two main tools we're going to use is AC3D and Notepad++, and I have the aircraft here. I've just unzipped it. I haven't actually moved it into the aircrafts folder. We'll do that now. Go ahead and paste that in there and just get a look at it here. Okay, there's the cockpit.obj. There's no vrconfig file, and that's that. So first thing I like to do is go ahead and open the cockpit.obj and just get a decent idea of what I'm looking at. I'll open it with Notepad++ here, and I can see global cockpit lit and this lit texture here and this normal. That means it's got some reflections and stuff. This is a freeware aircraft, but you can see it's obviously got some PBR love going on by the developer. And I'll come down here underneath all these numbers. These numbers are vector coordinates of each little vector point in the 3D mesh of the aircraft of the cockpit OBJ. That really doesn't tell you much, but once you start getting into words here, this stuff tells you quite a bit. And I'm just going to have a look here. I can see that he's got a solid camera here, which we'll go ahead and take out. That doesn't really help us in VR. Matter of fact, it hurts us most of the time. Other things he's using here are non-VR compatible manipulators. These drag axis picks do not work in VR at all. That's a very old manipulator style that was used back in the day that relies on capturing pixels that it would capture basically your mouse location on the 2D screen of the cockpit. You can see this, it captures 250 pixels of the X, 5 pixels of the Y. Anyway, point is it doesn't work in VR. It doesn't even show up as a click spot when you use it in VR in Explain11. So we will have to change every drag axis pix. I'm going to copy that and search, and I'll find it. So there's 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 28, 29. Okay, 28. So there's 28 drag axis picks that I'll need to change to a different kind of manipulator. Right off the bat, the easiest thing is to just change it to a drag axis if it's going to be a thing that you actually drag with your VR controller, up or down, or left or right, or in or out. If it's not a drag, and I can tell you right off the bat, I can tell this isn't a drag because the cursor that he used, this is actually, so it'll say ATTR manip, whatever type of manipulator it is. For this example, it'll be a drag axis pix. We're going to change that manipulator type, but then the next thing after manipulator type is the cursor type. Rotate small is like that little, so when you put your mouse over it, it'll give you like a cursor of like kind of how to manipulate that thing, just like a little preview of what you should do. And rotate small is the 2 little small arrows that make a little circle that say you can either rotate left or right. Well, rotate small is usually given to a knob, right? And I can look here and I can see, well, what is it? It's the nav2 standby frequency kilohertz knob. That would be the small knob, and this one here, the nav2 standby frequency megahertz knob, that's the big knob, and you can see it's rotate large. So these two drag axis picks I actually want to change to knobs, axis knobs. So I want this to be manip axis knob. I could do that right now, and I could go through all that. But I'm going to do that in a little bit, and I'll do that by hand. As a matter of fact, I'll do one right now just to show you how it's done. So attr underscore manip underscore axis underscore knob, right? That's it. It's a manip axis knob. Rotate small is fine to use for the cursor. Now these things are different. These are what you use for a drag axis pix, but for a knob, you use 4 things. You use, in fact, let me Control Z that so I can see. It says 0 to 95. What I'm looking for here is the dataref values that he uses. So what I need to do is I need to actually go into the file format specification page on the developer.explain.com. This is the OBJ file format specification. You can see it's a very, very, very large page. Okay, it's got a bunch of stuff. This is kind of your Bible when it comes to working in the OBJ file. Normally I don't need this, but I'm not used to working with the drag axis pix since it's such an old manipulator. So what I'll do is I'll do a search for that, and I'll try to find out what those numbers mean. Let's see here. Pixels, pixel lighting. Here we go. There it is. Manip drag axis pix, and then the cursor type, which we know was a rotate small. And then this is the how many pixels you want to drag, which is said 250. This is the step. This is the exp is the power of the exponential curve that controls the speed at which the okay, so that's like the speed. V1 and V2, and then the dataref. So V1 and V2 are the last 2 numbers before the actual dataref name, which is what I thought. I just wanted to make sure. So it's 0 to 95. So what we would do is we would go and look. Let's just do this. Look at the knob. So let's look for an axis knob here. Axis knob right here. So it's min, max, click delta, hold delta. So what that means is min and max are the bottom of your dataref range, which is 0, and the top, so 0 to 95. And then click delta and hold delta is every time you click it, you want it to go up or down by that amount. I'll just call it 1 for now, and then we'll test it later. So 0 to 95, click, each time you click it, you want it to go up 1, step of kilohertz, however they've got it programmed in there. And then 1 for hold. So if you hold it, it's going to kind of keep going up in steps of 1 as long as you hold it. So same thing with this one. This would be 108 to 117. So what I'll do is I'll go ahead and kill those. I'll go 1 to 1 like that. And I'll make sure I change this to a manip axis knob, right? So there, boom, I've fixed those 2. That's how easy it is. I've got 20 whatever of those. What did I say? 23, 28, something like that. I've just fixed 2 of them. Real simple. But I'm going to go ahead and save that so that it saves it. And let's go into AC3D and see what we can see, because that's where we have to bring in the yoke and where we have to do all kinds of fun things to the manipulators to give you center click spots on your throttle, etc., etc. I'm running an alpha build of AC3D for testing. I'm part of the testing crew for that. I find that it's very stable, and nothing I'm going to do in here is going to look or feel or act any different than the AC3D build you can get just online. You can get a 14-day free trial, and you can play with this. It's fully featured. You'll have to get the Explain plugin for it and follow the instructions on installing that. But when you do all that, you'll have AC3D and the ability to do things with Explain specifically. So what I want to do is I want to import. You can actually import. You can't do this in Blender. You can't import in Blender, but you can import in AC3D. So I'm going to import the cockpit.obj from where we just moved it, which is under Documents, Explain 11, Aircraft. LET 410 cockpit. Here we go. So I'm going to import that. Right, and it imports there. And what I'm going to do is, right now everything's wireframing. I'm not sure why. There, we'll take textures off. Textures off. There we go. So first thing I notice is everything's kind of walled in, right? I'm not seeing like individual manipulators. Everything's kind of got this like green like wall around it. So I can't even get through. So he solid walled this, which is fine. That's an old way of doing it to kind of keep your camera inside your cockpit. It doesn't really apply so much anymore, especially for VR. It's not great. So what we will do is select none here. We're going to select nothing. What I did is I clicked on this little box. These are the 4 boxes that give you levels of things you can select. I can select the whole group, which is the entire cockpit OBJ. I can click on anything and it selects everything inside the cockpit OBJ. We don't want that, so we'll select nothing. I can also select an object. So say I wanted to select an individual, switch like this guy. I can select just that guy, right? I can also select an individual face of an object. And I can select an individual point of a face. Most of the time we'll just be using object. We'll just select things by object, and you can select nothing by going up here to edit and click select nothing. The next thing in AC 3D that you'll notice is this is my 3D view. I can rotate things around. This is just the front view, so I can click my middle mouse button, hold it, and I can move it around. I'm not actually moving the object in space. I'm just moving the camera. I can use my mouse wheel to zoom in and out. Top, right, and then the left side. And if I wanted to go right, I could go, right or whatever. Bottom, whatever. I can change any one of these 4. I can also click on, like, say I wanted this 3D to be full screen. I can make it like that and click it full screen, or I can go back down to that. The next thing that's huge for us is the hierarchy view. So I'll go into Tools, Hierarchy View. And this is sort of your cockpit OBJ in another way to look at it. It's basically the same. So if I go in here and I look at where it starts with a rotation, right? And then it gives you a manip that I changed to a drag axis rotate. Or I mean, I changed it. No, this one. What did I do? This one should have been an axis knob. Oh, I didn't change this one. I changed the next one down. Yeah. So we got a drag axis, we got an axis knob, and an axis knob, and a manip command here with a flip. Okay. So if I go in here, it's going to be in the same order here. There's the rotation. That's going to be your, whatever that first thing was. What was that? The drag axis panel brightness. So that's your panel brightness knob. And if I click on explain objects properties, it'll tell you what the dataref and everything is for that. So it's panel brightness ratio, which is going to be your panel brightness knob, right? And this gives you like what kind it is. It's an axis. You can set it to a different one in here in AC3D. I can make it knob just by going to where's that at? Knob. Well, there's a command knob, a dataref knob. There it is. Command knobs and dataref knobs are a little bit different. We'll get into that later. But I do notice that it's walled. I don't want it to be a wall. A wall is that thing that blocks the camera from going through it. That's not what you want in VR. So we'll leave that alone for now. What I do want to do is get rid of this wall here. So I'm going to select that, and that selects this poly here. Now I'm going to look at what dataref it's actually assigned to, because that's going to show up as a giant green thing in X-Plane. Yeah, so it's also slaved to this nav2 standby frequency for whatever reason. Not sure why that's the case, but I'm going to hide this whole mesh by doing this right here. I'm going to click on this eye, and that whole thing's going to go away. I can bring it back like that. But if I leave it hidden like this and I export when I'm done with my work and I export it and I go into Explain and I check it out, that shouldn't be there anymore. This will be hidden even through the export. I can always go in and turn it back on and then hit export it again and it'll be back. So it's a way of quote unquote deleting it without actually getting rid of it completely in your history of your workflow. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just minimize this. So we haven't actually done anything or exported anything. So everything should be original. I'm going to open up Explain and I'm going to make sure that what I'm seeing in AC3D is also what we see in the plane when I click on Show Clickable Regions. The way to get all of your little green click spots, what you would hit in VR with your VR controllers to show up all at the same time. You can see the whole cockpit, everything all at once, everything that's manipulatable all at once, is to show clickable regions, which is in settings under general, show clickable regions in the cockpit right there, boom. Okay, and then I'm going to go new flight, and I'm going to find the LET, which is there. Go ahead and make that clear, start up, and that'll get going. While that's doing its thing, let's go back in here and get back to work here. I'm going to click that, I'm going to hide it. Okay, so I can see that I have these things that are kind of clickable. I've got my overhead here, my switches, and this is all good. This is all good stuff. And what these aren't the actual objects textured. These are the click spots. So they have the objects in different files. Now I can import those objects and I can look at it. So first of all, let's go ahead and bring in the yoke. All right. So by bringing in the yoke, that's going to teach you several things. So I want to import again. So I've already imported the cockpit.obj. That imported all this. I can actually import things on top of that. So I'm going to import. And in their objects folder, the only object that should be outside of the objects folder should be the cockpit.obj. That should be in the root folder always. Inside the objects folder, however, is all the other things that are the actual objects that you see with your eyes that aren't like hidden. So there's the middle console. There's the yokes and pedals. Okay, so I want to bring in yokes and pedals. So I'm going to double click on it, and then you can see down here it's loading the texture. Let's jump into Explain and see if this is loaded. Sound system cannot be initialized. That's because I'm using it to record. That's fine. Let's hide that. Hide that. Now I've shown clickable regions, and I'm not actually seeing that giant wall, which is cool. That's good. Okay, good deal. This must be the hide. Yep, that's the hide show. And this is our light. This was the one that was the very first thing. And you can see how it's like a drag up and down. Which that would be a line in VR. That would be that colored line. It would show up and down, and you'd have to drag up and down. We want to change that to a knob. So these are kind of hidden, which is cool. These are the click spots are hidden inside the texture because it's got the normals flipped, which is good. It's fine. I like that. I like to have like this, so there's like a subtle green glow that just shows that, hey, I've clicked it, I've latched onto it, but I don't want it to be like this giant green blob like this right here. We're gonna totally change this. The trims, you can't really see it. Let me see if I can get some more light here. See if I can brighten the world up a little bit. Come on. Oh, there it is. Okay. This trim wheel. Yeah, it's like, see how my camera can't go over anymore because he's got the wall up. But the trim wheel is very cool. It's super neat. It's textured well. But in VR, when you're doing this, it's just, you're not going to see it underneath this giant green thing. So I want to actually make the trim wheel. I want to get rid of the giant green thing and make the trim wheel what you grab. Anyway, that's not too bad. Let's just leave this right here. Then we'll see our changes soon live. Okay, so I brought in the yoke and the pedals here. Wow, that looks yeah, sometimes the yoke, this is going to be one of those times where the yoke comes in oriented weird, and it's fine as long as I don't move it. It's not oriented in the way you think it would be. Like, it's not like right here. It's actually like laying down and actually like upside down. So if I select nothing, right, and I come in here and I just click on that guy, and I think that guy would be the pilot side probably. I don't know, it's rotated. Let's see. So that's backwards. Let's see here. I think that's the pilot side yoke. I don't know for sure. Because if I take everything, I mean, maybe it's this one. Let's say they're just laid down and flipped upside down, but they're actually in their right spot. And let's call that one the pilot side, and we'll see what we can see here in a minute. So what I want to do is I want to click on, you want to click on the pilot side yoke. Now, not the rest of this. The rest of this is other things. That's a stem. That's a pedal. I don't want any of that. All I want is the actual yoke, right? Just this part. Just the actual yoke handle, right? And I want to take that and I want to move it into the cockpit.obj. Well, what do I mean? Well, let's see here. I'm going to go into the hierarchy view again. Now you notice here there's like world, group, cockpit.obj, and then a default LOD, and then boom, it starts with animations and things. So that's cockpit.obj, and then I can go down, and remember I imported something else. I imported right here, boom, yokes and pedals obj. That's a whole different obj. That's underneath it. And I want to take the yoke animation, which is this. So see how it's blue? It's blue because I clicked on it. That's what's highlighted. So there's a show with it, and there's some rotations with it. You see how all this is a tiered thing? So you see the tree here, so it's like animation, rotate, rotate, and then under that are like more rotations. Under that is another animation with a show, and under that it's this and this and this, and then it stops. And then this one is something totally different. It's back on house level. Does that make sense? This is like home level right here for this animation right here. So you've got yokes, pedals, default LOD, and you've got this. And when I click on the word animation, it'll highlight everything under it. Boom. That's the whole thing. And that would be this side, right? So that's the if I look, that looks like that's the whole, what is that? Pedals. Those are pedals. So I can go edit, select nothing, and those go away. I can click on this one, this whole tree, and it selects all that. All right, it's going to select every bit of all that, pedals and all kinds of stuff. Okay, I want to take that whole thing, so I want to select that, make sure it's selecting what we want, which is this guy. I want to take this whole animation right there, click on the word animation, the whole tree lights up. This is the house. This left line is your home, and then everything underneath the home is all associated with this one thing, which is the yoke. Okay. Now, how do I take that and put it in the cockpit obj, which is up here in this part? This is the yokes. Everything above is the cockpit, so it's in the yokes obj. So you know how I clicked on this animation? It selected this whole tree. I can click this animation again and hold my mouse button down. I'm gonna do it right now. Clicking, I'm holding the mouse button down. While holding it down, I'm gonna just scroll my cursor up to the top. I'm not actually doing the the wheel right now, I'm just literally hovering it over this object selected 17. That's the top of the screen, and it rolls up. If I go up here higher, it goes faster, right? I still got my mouse held down. Still got my mouse held down. Okay. I'm going to click on this first animation under default LOD because I want this yoke at the very top. I want everything new to go at the very top. So I'm going to release my mouse on default LOD. Watch what happens. I did that, and it put it above it, okay? I don't want it above it, so I'm actually going to take this again. I'm going to select nothing, okay? I'm going to select animation, do it again, and I'm actually going to let go on animation instead of default LOD, and it's going to put it above it, right? And so this is how I want it. I want it to be cockpit.obj, default LOD, and then my new stuff. And then the stuff that was the top stuff is now just underneath it, right? That's what I've done. So now I can hit edit, select nothing. Okay, now that yoke is in the cockpit OBJ as well as in the yokes OBJ. It's still there down there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come down here. I'm going to click on yokes and pedals OBJ, highlight all of it, and I'm actually going to highlight it as a group. Yokes, pedals, OBJ, highlight it as a group, and I'm going to delete that, okay? It doesn't delete it from the aircraft, it just deletes it out of our hierarchy view. If I leave it in there, when I go to export, it's going to export that again into our cockpit OBJ. I don't want to do that. That's too much crap in the cockpit OBJ. So I'm going to delete that. So I'm going to go file, edit, edit, delete. Okay, so now all I have is the cockpit OBJ now, but I have this nice yoke in there. Okay, and then I'm going to come in here and start working on the yoke a little bit. Now each one of these polys, poly 0 hard blend equals yes, those are your actual manipulator things. The rotates are the yellow lines coming off of these manipulators are your axis lines that show where things rotate around. So straight up and down means something's going to roll around that line, and the horizontal, something's going to roll around that line that way. So those are just your animation axis lines and animation translation lines. Rotation and translation axis lines is what they are. So there's all these rotations, but all I really care about is each little individual thing. So this individual thing, let's find out what that is. Okay, that's what we want. That's going to be our actual handle. Okay, let's look at what these other things are. So click on this one. That is going to be the button. Whenever you highlight on something and I go to zoom with my mouse wheel, see how it's like slow and it's like kind of dumb? I can go up here to views, look at selection, and it zooms you in, and now when you rotate, you're rotating around that one little thing. That is a trim. It looks like a trim button, maybe. Since it's oriented like that, probably that's going to be like aileron trim or something. I'm not sure. But what I can do is I can go into X-Plane here, object properties, and see if that's actually assigned a dataref. Nope, it's not. So we can work on that later. For now, what I want to do is make sure it's not going to be clickable, because I don't want it to be clickable unless we know what we're doing. So it's a none right now, which is good. If your manipulator is none, your VR controller will not be able to click on it, and it won't do anything. It'll be like it's not even a thing. It'll just show up. What I do want to do is make sure it doesn't draw. So we want to disable drawing. Now, why do we want to disable drawing? Because right now I've got this one in the cockpit OBJ. I've also got this one in the yokes OBJ. So it would draw it twice, and it would calculate it twice in your GPU as far as like the performance and the frames per second. You don't want a bunch of things on top of each other. So you want to disable drawing of this. That doesn't mean it's going to disable the ability for you to be able to manipulate it. It just means it's not going to draw it twice in the OBJ. So don't care about that guy. This guy is, what is that? If you look at selection. Okay, so that's the top. That may be clickable. Obviously, it's got to be something. Let's see if it's got a dataref associated with it. Probably not. No, it doesn't. Disable drawing. It's fine. Okay, so that's it. So we've got 3 things. We've got that and the other 2 things. So with this one's the one we want to go ahead and assign stuff to. So first thing we want to do is disable the drawing of it, because we want it to be a manipulator and not a drawn thing, double drawn on each other. And we'll click on the kind, and for yokes you want them to be an axis 2D. Okay, it's just how Xplane does it. These are axis 2Ds, and I always give them 500 pixels on the X length, which is left right, and 500 pixels on the Y length, which is up down. This is how you would set it up old school way, to use it with a mouse. If you were going to fly with the mouse by clicking on the actual dude, that's how you would do it. We have to have it like this so that we can, in the vrconfig, do some more tuning of it and make it work with our VR controllers. But in the vrconfig, when you do yokes and tune them, they have to be drag XY yokes, which AC3D is calling it an axis 2D, but actually in the cockpit.obj it'll be manip axis drag XY. That's what we want. So X is 500, Y is 500. Minimum on the X is almost always -1 and max is 1. Same thing with the Y, although a lot of times the Y is backwards. I'm going to assume the Y is backwards again because it's like that on most every plane. So minimum would be 1, max would be -1, and if that's backwards, that's easily fixable. Now, here is where you type in your data refs. Now, I know these because I've done it so many times. But I'll show you. So if you didn't know that, it's like, well, how do you find that? Well, you go into another aircraft that you've done, or another aircraft that you have, like even a laminar aircraft. Like, let's just go into the 172. I'll open up the cockpit.obj, any of them, and I'll just search find yoke. And I can see right here. So we've got roll. This is it. Remember, drag XY. And they've got 4 arrows as the cursor. Now they used 100 and 100. And like I said, but it's -1 to 1 is your X, and then 1 to -1 is your Y, just like I've got it. And sim cockpit 2 controls yoke roll ratio is the one you want in the first one. So you would copy that and you would paste it here. And then I can paste that here, and I can change this roll to pitch, P-I-T-C-H, pitch. And I can do 4 arrows right here. The tooltip, I can just call it, yoke, right? And then that's it. And now it's ready to go. Yeah, that's pretty much it. So I can now close this hierarchy view, and that's what I want to do for now. That's pretty much all I want to do, is I want to get that in there, and I want to go ahead and test it, right? So what I'll do before I test it is I'll go into my actual, before I export it, I'll go into my thing. Where's it at? There it is. And go into here, and I want to rename this, because what will happen is when I go to export this, it's going to export right over this one and call it the exact same thing. And what you've done is, if you don't do what I'm about to do, is you've lost the original. So if what I do breaks something and I have to go back and redo it, I don't have the original to import from. I have to import the broken one or go re-download it. Well, I don't like to do that, so I'll just call this like original, right? So that's the original. And so there's that. And I also like to save my work in AC3D, just so I can open it easier without having to import all the time. So I click save. I can come in here and go into aircraft, into my LET folder, and I'll just call this number 1. This saves as a standard AC3D file. This does nothing actually for your plane, but it allows you to open this a lot easier and quicker in the beginning. So I'll save this as 1. The next revision I'll save it as 2, etc., etc. So, okay, we're ready to go. The biggest thing that you want to do before you export is make sure 100% that you don't have any other imported things. You've deleted all the other imported things. So that's the bottom of the cockpit obj, and there's no more like yoke, pedals obj, or anything else underneath here that we've brought in. So nothing else is in there. I'll select nothing. Then I'll come on here to the explain thing, and I'm going to click bulk export. Now when I click bulk export, a couple things happens. It builds a new cockpit obj. It calls it what you imported, whatever naming convention you imported, which was the let underscore cockpit obj. It's going to call it that, and it's going to put it in that folder. And so now you have a brand new obj. Also, what it does is it shuts down AC3D. And so anything you want to do after that, you have to reopen AC3D and reopen that file that you saved and work from there. So I'll go bulk export, and then it's going to ask where you want to export it. I'll double click on that, and I'll put it in the root folder, which is here, and I'll click select folder, and then it's going to shut down. Now it'll say this model uses more than one texture, blah blah blah. Don't worry about it, just click OK. Let it do its thing. Now it's shut down. Now what I can do, this says your OBJ is different. Do you want to reload it now to the new one? I can say, what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to say no. And the reason I'm going to say no is because I don't have these things in the new OBJ. Why? Because when you export out of AC3D, all it ever gives you is the texture that it's using and the point counts. Okay, it won't give you these PBR things, these global cockpit lits and these other cockpit lits and normals. It won't give you that. You don't necessarily need it to preview things in Xplane. Let's prove that out. So if I go into here and I go reload aircraft and art, it's going to reload now with the new cockpit OBJ and probably with the new yoke that we just put in there. I'm hoping that we put in the pilot side yoke and not the co-pilot side, but it's hard to tell when it's flipped upside down and backwards and sideways like it was. But we'll see here in a second. I think we got the right one. It says error loading the aircraft package. The aircraft may not look correct. And then it says please see the log.txt for error information. Okay, we'll check that in a little bit. So I go down and okay, this is not clickable and this one is. Doggone it, we got the wrong one. But okay, you can see that clearly we've done the right thing, just with the wrong yoke. So yeah, so we'll go back and we'll change that, bring the other yoke in and do the exact same thing. No biggie, it's not hard. But that's how you do that. You can see that now this hide show manipulator, which we don't even care about in VR, now is not nested in the yoke animation. That's what happens when you get it outside of its animation. So now we have this yoke manipulator, or this manipulator is supposed to stick on the yoke. That's not even on there because the yoke animation is nested over here. So we will fix that by going back into AC3D and putting the yoke, putting the correct yoke in. So let's go ahead and do that now. I can minimize that. But what I did want to show you real quick is that you can see that we don't need all the lit reflections and the normals and everything just to come in here and do some work. When we're done, we'll make sure those are in there, because every time you export, you have to like cut and paste those in, and that's just an extra workflow that you don't necessarily need when you're doing this kind of stuff. But you can see it didn't really break anything. It did break something, so it gave me an error and it said the aircraft might not look right. So let's see what that is. Let's go look in the log and see if maybe it put it in there already. Okay, that's the sound error that it was giving. That's fine. What else? I wonder if that's all it was. No. Sound system. Yeah, it's fine. Here. Something about the new OBJ it didn't like. think that's all. Let's see. Avionics, Lua, plugins. No VR config, that's fine. I wouldn't give that error. Avatar. It's gotta be the sound is what's causing that error. I don't know, did it say, what does it say, look correct? I'm gonna try to find that. Yeah, here we go. I don't know, it could be because I don't have those textures in there. Glass elements, obj, all attached objects. This object does not use the same panel region scheme. This is it. This object does not use the same panel region scheme as the cockpit object. All attached objects must use the panel texture in the exact same manner as the cockpit object. All attached objects must use the panel texture in the exact same manner. Oh, so all I gotta do is assign the panel texture to the yoke. That's easy enough. Alright, so let's go back into AC3D here. We'll do it here. So get the alpha build. I've got like 3 versions of AC3D on my computer. Make sure we get the right one. Okay, aircraft, LET 1. This will put everything in the way we just had it. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to import the other one. Yokes and pedals, yokes and pedals. So this one's already in the cockpit.obj. Takes a minute. Right, and I can go edit, select nothing. Make sure I'm selecting things by this. And come in here, go to hierarchy view, and make sure I'm getting the right thing. So click on this one. That's the one I got, which is the Copilot's side. Okay, I want to go ahead and kill that one. Right. So actually, I want to actually delete it, the whole thing, because I don't want the Copilot side. Oh. So we'll go in here and go edit, delete. That one. Okay. And I want this guy. So I've selected him. He's down here. I want to select the entire animation for him, which is that whole thing. And I'll take it and I'll do the same thing. I'm going to click and hold, drag it all the way up, put it on the first animation thing here, right underneath default LOD, put it right on top of there and put it there. There, boom. There's that. I'll go edit, select nothing. I'm kind of do this fast here. Select that guy. Make sure that's not a wall, disable the drawing. Okay, select this one. That's the one. We will make sure we disable the drawing, change it to an axis 2D. 500, 500, -1, 1, 1, and -1. Sim, actually, might still have that. Yep, there it is. Call this one pitch. Go 4 arrows. It doesn't matter. You can do any kind of cursor you want. just it makes sense when it makes sense to people. So 4 arrows. We'll take this one, and we will make sure it's a manip none and make sure it's disabled. And we'll take this one. Make sure it's a manip none and disable. Okay, and then what I want to do is, I noticed that it had like that Z fighting, which is like that flickering thing. So this, my manipulator, is on the exact same textures as the textures inside the yoke obj. So the yoke pedals obj and the manipulator, you don't want them to be on the exact same set of textures, otherwise they'll like flicker with each other. When you go to grab it, you'll see like this green flickering mess. So I want to descale it a little bit. I want to actually do a couple things. I can take it and so I highlight it right here and I have scale 100%, 100%, 100%. This is the X left and right percentage, the up and down percentage, and the in and out percentage, XYZ. So I like to make it a little smaller. So I'm actually going to go 98, 98, and 98. And I'll hit scale and you'll watch and you'll see it shrink just a little bit. Hit scale, boom, it shrunk just a little bit, right? And then what I want to do is I want to actually go to flip the normals. I'll go to surface, flip normal. Now when I do that, what that does is that makes it mostly transparent. It takes all the green stuff and flips it inside out. And what you're left with is the transparent part. If I left that at 100% and I went and I flipped the normals, you wouldn't get the Z fighting anymore. You wouldn't get that flickering anymore. But what you would get is a completely transparent thing to grab. So you could grab it and you still get all the nice textures, but you lose the green part, which shows you that you've actually grabbed it and latched it. And so you kind of need that too. So what this will do is this should give it a nice green outline on the inside of the U, kind of like I did with the TBM. That was my strategy on the TBM 900 yoke. It's just kind of a more elegant way to do it rather than this big green blob to grab. You know what I mean? So let's leave that like that. I'm going to select nothing. I'm going to come down here. I'm going to remove my yokes pedals obj. We can't forget to do that before we export. I'll hit edit, delete. Right? So now I'll zoom out, make sure that's what I got going on there. Yep. So, and then, and I want to make that the textures to try to get rid of that error. So it wants me to make it the panel texture, which is fine. Let me select it as the animation, right, as the object. I want to select this whole thing. And I can assign a texture to it by going object texture. And I can set it to panel PNG. That's what it wants it to be. It wants it to be panel PNG. Set it to panel PNG, and it kind of makes it go away just like all these other manipulators. So these other manipulators are wireframe. If I go up here to 2D and I select texture off, it's going to make it white. And this is white just like this is white. It's not a different texture, and I think that's what the error was. So let's edit, select nothing. I've taken off the yokes obj. I've fixed that texture thing. I've put the right yoke in there. So let's go ahead and save it. This is revision 2. Get the right aircraft. It keeps wanting me to go to the Cessna 310. That was the last one I worked on before this one. I'll call this one 2, revision 2. Save it. And I'll go explain, bulk export, and make sure I select that root folder there. Select folder, and it's going to make a new cockpit obj. Whenever that goes away, whenever AC3D goes away, your new cockpit obj is ready to roll. You see this Z fighting here? It's locked up right now, so I can't really show you, but it would flicker as I moved it, and it just looks awful in VR. I hate that. So this should fix it. We should be on the correct yoke side here, and we should not have that anymore. We should have a nice green line towards the inside of the U of the yoke. That should look a lot better. Yep, there it is. See that inside green line? And then there's our yoke. We've got the 4 arrows. The 4 arrows means you've got the right thing. This here click spot, which is the hide show, needs to be nested inside the animation. So let's go fix that. Let's jump back into AC3D here. We'll go to File, Open. And we need to find that. So yes, I want to load that again. We need to find that manipulator, and so it would be a hide yoke. It would be a manip, I think. Yeah. Let's see, where is it? Hide yoke, graphics view, hide yoke. Oh, there it is, manip toggle hand, hide yoke. Okay, so that is a manipulator that is the hide yoke data ref from 1 to 0. And you can see it's kind of way down the line. It's way down the line of all the things. So the easier way to find it then, I thought it would be closer. The easier way to find it then is to look for it here. I think it's probably going to be one of these. So I'll select things by this. You got to edit, select nothing. Make sure you're selecting them by the, and you can turn the textures off to get the white. I think it's that. So I'll go into here and I'll click Objects Properties. Make sure that's what it is. Boom, that's it. Okay, so that guy needs to be nested in with the others. So I'll go back into hide yoke and I'll find him, and there he is. Okay, now I'm gonna do just like I did before. I'm gonna click and I'm gonna hold, and I'm just gonna roll up into the top, which is my animation here, and I'm gonna put him here, just right in the same little animation group as my yoke itself, which is this poly right here. So I'll just let go there, and now it's nested in there. And I'm going to save it. So I'll go File, Save As, and get it to the correct aircraft. Call it 3. And make sure I don't have any other OBJs in there, which I don't, of course. And I will bulk export and make sure I'm in the root folder. It goes away and reload. You notice that error is gone because I've got the yoke texture correct now. And when that comes back, that hide show manipulator should travel with the yoke. And if you look at the positioning in here, you'll see this is all yoke, right? There's my manip drag Y, and there's my manip toggle, all inside the same animation, right? So it's in there. It's just nested. It's nested behind the texture. Let's see if I can find it by. So it looks like my manipulator here is blocking that one. Well, we want it. There's something weird going on there too. That might go away once I get the texture in there. Or I bet I just need a disable drawing on that. Yeah, I bet I missed that disable drawing. Okay, so let's go back in here. What I think I'm going to try and do is I think I'm going to try and take let's go back into AC3D and fix some things here. So you see how this is kind of back and forth, give and take, you know, do it the best you can, then let it tell you what's wrong, and then you go back in and you fix it. So I'm going to select nothing, and then I'm going to turn my textures off. I'm going to come in here and kind of select the stem, right, which was giving us a little bit of weird textures. Go in here, make sure, yeah, I didn't disable the drawing. Make sure I disable the drawing on that, because that will give you weird, and again, that's weird texture. Remember I said the double texture thing? So that's fixed. And then what I wanted to do is, this didn't seem to show. So what I can do is move it out a little bit. There's several ways I can do this. One thing I'm going to do is I'm going to try to just move it out just a little bit. So I'm literally going to click it and drag it out this way. And I'm going to save that as 4. If that doesn't work, I'll mess with positioning in the hierarchy, but I don't think I need to do that. And let me just make sure I didn't do anything weird. Toggle hand, not disabled. It is a wall. I don't want it to be a wall. Okay, and then I can save that again. And now I'll export again. Bulk export. Jump back in here. When this disappears, we're ready to go. Reload aircraft and art. And then we'll see. That's beautiful for VR right there. That's perfect. But what's not perfect is that I still don't have the hide showing up. And why that matters to me is because in VR you really don't want to hide, but in 2D you do, and I want to build this to where I'm not breaking it for the 2D people as well. So let me keep working here. Let me go back into AC3D. We'll move it out even further, and we'll go from there. We're just going to get it to show up, so we're going to move it quite a bit here just to get it to show, and then we'll move it back where it needs to be. Kind of a stubborn little click spot. Not really sure why it went away in the first place, but later. No worries. No worries at all. I was actually moving it the wrong way anyway. These are your gauges and stuff. This is your, what is that? Here, let's look at it. Look at selection. The yoke has got me all jacked up on which way we're actually facing. Okay, let's go to 3D and take the textures off there. Okay, so, alright, so I've got it moved out. Yeah. So I've got it moved out in line with the throttle pretty much. Let's keep, so that, is that the right side? Yes, okay. So I need to move it this way more. move it out to like here and see what happens. Actually moved it the wrong way last time. I'll just keep saving this as 4 since we're only moving one thing. Bulk export, root folder. It disappears, we can reload. Check how long this is going on. Doesn't even say. Still nothing. Okay, so what we can do is we can look here and see. So there are the throttles. It should be like hovering like right there. Let's see, sometimes I'm not sure. It's gotta be a hierarchy thing at this point. Let's go back into AC3D. Okay, we will edit, select nothing. Select that guy, go into the hierarchy view. Okay. So it's the first thing. Let's put it underneath. Oh, not there. Don't want it there. What I want it to be is underneath this guy. There. So we got the yoke, and then we got that. I wonder if it's a hide. Wait a second. So hide yoke manip none. Toggle hide yoke, and then it's hide 0, 1. I wonder if we take it. Let's take it. So when you comment out like that with a £, you're deleting this line essentially without actually deleting it. So I could easily go back and remove this £, and it becomes back active, but it disables this line, so it's going to be as if it's not there. So this is a hide right here, and I think it's hidden. I think that's what's going on. So I'm going to try that. So I've basically commented out that line. I've saved it, so now it's that's going to apply. So let's reload and see if it's there. If not, I'll try the new, try to export this now with the new position. But basically, I've taken this poly show and I've deleted it. I've basically done this. What I did right there is the same thing I just did in the cockpit.obj, but with that £, or hashtag, however you want to say it. It's 2018, it's a hashtag. Nope. Didn't do it. What did that do? Okay. I did it. I hid it. Obviously. How did I hide it? So somewhere I've hidden it. I'm probably just gonna have to redo the click spot. That's okay. Let's go back in and save that. What's this draw enable? actually don't want anything to draw enable there. So let's try that. Maybe that's what's killing it. So what I've done is I've put the hide back in. So I took and then I put the pound sign on this draw enable. That may be what's making it weird. Let's try that. Somehow here I clicked on something to make it hide, and maybe it's just buried behind the texture. I don't know. I don't see it there though. Let's see. Let's turn that back on. What is it's a hand. So your cursor should go to a hand. When that click spot is active. Let's take it and let's see, where's that? It's moved that way. Is the normals? The normals may be flipped, and that's why it's transparent. Let's flip it real quick, see what happens. No. The normals are correct. So, what is it? Is it why am I not seeing you? I could put you at the very stinking top, right there. I don't think that's going to work because it's not going to actually, this is the rotation. Yeah, that might work. Let's try that. Let's try that. Save that as a new one. That's a fairly significant change. We'll call that number 5. See what that did. I still think it's in there. It's just swallowed up. Like it's swallowed up by the texture. And it's moving with the texture, so it's somewhere inside here swallowed up. But I think I still need to move it out more. Doesn't seem like it should be, but I think I'm gonna have to. Yeah, it's still in there. Yeah. And you know, what I could do is I could move it down to where it's on the stem down here. Was this a tiller? Is that a tiller? No way. Does that move when I do this? Wait, what is this? This is moving with it. Weird. I have no idea what that is. KPCM squared. I've never even heard of that. If that's a tiller, I'm totally... Oh, it is, look. Yes, we will implement this tiller too. Okay, so that's gonna be awesome. Let's go back in here one more time. If this doesn't work, I'm just gonna close the video and you just have to trust me that I'll eventually get it by doing these different things. All I'm doing is I'm trying to make this work, and then we're gonna close out this video and we'll do a different session later. But the more you see me do this, the more you'll understand how this works, and you'll get confident in doing it yourself. Open up 5, and we are going to grab this guy. Select nothing. Grab just this guy, and we are going to move him out, my friend. Out to here. Right? And then save it as 5, and we're going to bulk export. And we're going to try one more time and wrap this up. Oh, no hand. So weird. Let me see if I can move around and get it to show. That click spot is just not showing up anywhere. I did get it to click one time. I wonder if I can sail underneath here and look up and click it. Nope. Hey, turkey buzzard. Where are you? Is that it? No. That's not it. Okay, well, you guys know that at the very least I could obviously make my own little mesh, put it right on my texture, and call that the click spot. I was just trying to use his established one, but it's easy enough for me to just make my own, and that's probably what I'll end up doing. That'll just give that functionality back to the 2D users. But that's how you do yokes. That's really how you do yokes, and then that's how you get the yoke to at least be in the cockpit and clickable and manipulatable by the VR controller. Now, if I went into VR right now and clicked on this, the yoke would not feel right. It would feel almost right in ergonomic mode, but in realistic mode, it would just be way off. That's because you have to go into the VR config file and tune it up and tune it for realistic mode, which is going to be another tutorial. And we'll get into that soon. But this is how you bring yokes into the cockpit.obj using AC3D. And on the next video, we'll go ahead and do the throttles. Right now, you see there's no center click manip spot to bring both of them up at once or down at once. You have to do them one at a time. So with VR controllers, that's not very realistic. You wouldn't do that with your hands. You would grab them both with one hand and kind of move them both up. Same thing with the props and the mixture. There's all those drag axis picks, which are probably like, yeah, that's probably a drag axis picks right there. So I can do that here in 3D, but with my VR controller, I would not be able to lift that guy. Yeah, the other thing that's giving it away that it's a drag axis picks is I don't see the green click spot. I'm able to move things without seeing the green click spot. That means it's going to be not clickable in VR, but it is in 2D. It's a 2D only thing. So that's going to be a drag axis picks. We got to change all those. There's 28 of them. So on the next video, we'll change those, and we'll fix the throttles. And then also I want to change this. I'm going to, just like I brought in the yoke, I will get rid of this box here for the elevator trim, and I will bring in this trim wheel as a manipulator. I'll go ahead and scale it up a little bit so it doesn't Z-fight and give you that flicker, and then I will assign that the same data ref that this box has, and then you'll be able to manipulate it with your VR controller much better. And once I get everything clickable and movable the way I like it for VR, then we're pretty much done with the actual cockpit click spots, and we're done with the AC3D part. Everything else at that point is done in the VR config file. But we have to get the cockpit, we have to get all the stuff in the cockpit that we want. So we'll do that in the next video, probably several videos, and we'll just keep videoing and following the journey of getting this thing VR complete. Thanks guys, hope you learned something today.